Hello, freshmen. Greetings. So nice to be with you here on this beautiful Friday afternoon, or maybe it's Saturday and you're sitting at home just enjoying a very entertaining video here about the introductory paragraph. So let's get started. The introductory paragraph is hugely important for your argument. A, it's going to hook the reader. Okay, by this we mean it's going to grab your reader's attention and hopefully with that first sentence, make him hungry for the next. So he's already engaged with your voice and excited to learn more. Most importantly, it's going to introduce your thesis statement, right? So that's what we want to get to. That's what we want to make sure that we build up to. But in order to get there, we need to be oriented. And I want you to think for a second here about back to your freshman orientation. We didn't just throw you here your first day and expect that you would know what to do. You had a 2-3 day orientation where we kind of gently got you ready for that first day. And in a way, you're doing the same thing here. You're trying sentence by sentence to get the reader prepared for the more in-depth technical analysis that you'll be doing in the body of the essay. It's also going to set the voice, okay? So right now, you're probably used to my voice. You've heard my voice in class a lot. And to a certain extent, you're doing the same thing with the introductory paragraph. You're trying to make the reader kind of comfortable with your voice and feel like he's in the hands of someone who knows what he is talking about. And the best way we do that is by writing authoritatively, but also by writing clearly and directly. So we want that language to be really clear and direct, okay? And finally, it's the idea of the first impression. Anytime you're writing for somebody, you need to be mindful of the fact that there's a lot of other things they might want to be doing besides reading your own writing, okay? So if you begin your essay in a very boring, cliche fashion, or even worse, in language that's marred by stylistic errors or grammatical errors, it's going to turn off your reader, and or she is not going to be looking forward to reading the next paragraph and the next page. Okay, so how should it be structured? This is what we call here at Regis a funnel paragraph, a funnel structure to your paragraph. Okay, and as you can see, it resembles a funnel in that with each stage, it's getting narrower and narrower and narrower. Okay, and you also see that I have about 5 sentences here. Each one of these levels represents a sentence. This is not a formulaic number. Certainly you can have more than that. And I'm going to recommend later that you think about 5 to 7 sentences. But let's say for our purposes now, for an interpretive essay here at Regis, you're going to have no less than 5. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that first sentence. There are a couple different ways you can do this, and these are just some recommendations. Most importantly, you guys are creative guys, right? And you can come up with ways to do this. You want to come up with a first paragraph that, again, is going to hook the reader, that's going to engage the reader, okay? So we're not going to do that by beginning with a cliche, okay? So you might begin here with a definition, okay? Definitions are useful because definitions are very fundamental and rudimentary, right? And because of the nature of a dictionary, they can rarely get into complexity. So the nice thing about a definition, it lets you start basic, but then move to complex, okay? And show how a hero, in this case, is much more than that. Okay, let's go back to now the bold claim, all right? So the bold claim, the second option here. Here, the bold claim is your chance to really grab the reader's attention with something that's new and provocative. For example, let's say here, heroes no longer exist. Certainly people might question that, but that's going to grab some attention. Don't just do this for the shock value or to grab attention, but maybe to eventually kind of build up to your idea of the thesis statement being maybe about a different kind of hero or a new kind of hero. And on a similar notion is your provocative question, as you have here. Okay, finally, a historical anecdote could work, okay? Something that might resemble something about your thesis statement, but again, it's got to be an anecdote that is truly interesting or grabs the reader's attention. One thing I want you guys to really avoid is sort of a classic middle school way of beginning an essay, and something like this. Have you ever been a hero? Now, be honest, guys. At some point in your life, you've started an essay like that, or something like, "Do you believe in myths? Well, Karen Armstrong does." Or, "Have you ever been a hero? Well, Odysseus has." Okay, this is a cliched way to start an essay, and we really just want to avoid that now that we're big-time freshmen. All right. Okay, so next is, what are we going to do for the second sentence? Well, I've shown you here the first sentence, and I'm using my dictionary example, okay? So in my second sentence, I'm going to, as we talked about before, I'm going to kind of narrow that down a little bit, okay? Here I acknowledge that as lovely as that short definition is, it sort of misses something, right? So here, while I'm narrowing and in some way responding to my first sentence, I'm also getting ready for my pivot sentence. So no matter what you do, the second sentence should be kind of narrowing or specifying something from the first sentence. Okay, so let's say somewhere in the middle of that funnel, if you remember that funnel we looked at, somewhere in the middle of that you should be pivoting, okay? And a pivot means just a turn, right? Just like you might pivot in basketball or something, or in a dance. By your third or fourth sentence, you want to begin pivoting from whatever that opening engagement was to the thesis that you've already composed, of course. Because remember, that's really the first thing we're doing is the thesis. Okay, so you can see in my third example here, you can see the epic poetry presents to readers many examples of this more complex kind of hero who possesses great strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so with this sentence, I'm showing the reader that what I will probably be talking about is poetry, and especially the idea of a hero in poetry. All right, so I'm beginning to pivot. My reader still might not know that I'm obviously talking about the Odyssey, but as you can see, I'm starting to move in that direction, right? Okay, so now somewhere towards the second to last sentence is where we want to have both context and our tag sentence, okay? So our context here that we're looking for is whatever the reader might need to know in order to understand your thesis statement. One of those things that a reader needs to know is what materials are being discussed. So when we're discussing a work of art or scholarship or history, it's very important that our audience knows exactly what is being discussed, okay? So we'll have the title, and we'll, in this case, books, just try to keep this in mind, books are going to be italicized. Films will be italicized. Publications will be italicized. And things like poems, short stories, articles will be in quotation marks. You're going to want to mention your author and creator. So, of course, in this case, ours is Homer, right? So make sure you let the reader know kind of who composed this, who is responsible for it. And finally, the genre, okay? Now, genre helps me make a nice acronym of TAG, but to be more clear here, what we're looking for is what kind of form is it? What kind of thing is it? Is it a play? Is it an autobiography? Is it an epic poem? Okay, so we want to let the reader know what it is. And then, of course, for our example here, it's an epic poem. Okay, let's move on to now our thesis. Oh, so actually, before the thesis, let me just show you how this is all going to look. And at this point, it might be helpful for me to read this out loud. The Oxford English Dictionary defines hero as a person who has demonstrated great bravery or skill. However, this definition neglects to mention that a hero might possess weaknesses as well. Epic poetry presents to readers many examples of this more complex kind of hero, who possesses both great strengths and weaknesses. In the epic poem The Odyssey, Homer presents Odysseus as a complex hero, a man of twists and turns. You like my little dot there? Okay, now we've arrived at the thesis statement. And guys, for our purposes, and for most of your time here at Regis, the thesis statement should be the last sentence of your introductory paragraph. Why? Well, it's sort of acting as the launch, right? It's the springboard from which we get into your body, okay? So it's something that obviously requires the context of what comes before it, but it helps you then kind of launch into your argument that follows. So now you can see how the whole thing looks here. Okay, I'm going to spare you me reading it again, but I hope you get a sense for how it looks. Okay, just a quick note about style, guys. Maybe you think, I want to impress my reader with some big fancy words and some fancy jargon, okay? But here, actually, we want to make sure that we don't bog the reader down in heavy argument. The best kind of writing for our purposes here are crisp, clear, concise sentences. Ones that very briefly say what they want to say, and language that is clear and direct. All right, so this is not the time to bust out the thesaurus, guys. We don't want to bust out that thesaurus here, okay? Because what in fact it'll do, it's going to alienate the reader, not engage him or her. Okay, so to review here, our intro paragraph, it's going to orient the reader in the argument. It's going to engage the reader with your voice, and it's going to lead up to the thesis. And each sentence will come out of the previous. And keep in mind, it's going to be about 5 to 7 sentences. All right, that's it. I hope this helped, and get ready to work on these in class on Monday.